Come on, face it. When was the last time a new rock band genuinely surprised you? Not impressed you, not remind you of a band you loved 30 years ago. I mean, surprised you. Because if you are over 30, there is a good chance you stopped expecting that a long time ago. You didn't stop loving rock. You just stopped expecting it to surprise you. Somewhere along the way, we quietly accepted that the great era was over. Nirvana was over. Soundgarden was over. The big rock bands belong to another generation. Nobody announced it. We just stopped looking. And then, three sisters in Monterrey, Mexico started a rock band. The strange part? They didn't seem to know rock was supposed to be dead. And what happened next wasn't supposed to happen. In 2014, Daniela Villarreal was 14. Paulina was 12. Alejandra was 9. Three sisters. A bedroom, a camera, and a Metallica song. They recorded themselves playing Enter Sandman and uploaded it to YouTube. Then things got weird. Kirk Hammett noticed them. Television noticed them. Eventually, they ended up on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And suddenly, everybody had the same reaction. Look at these kids. And honestly, they were amazing. But there was an obvious problem. They were kids. Which meant the internet already knew how this story was supposed to end. The video goes viral. Everybody gets excited. The kids grow up. The internet moves on. End of story. Except, the story didn't end. Because while everybody else was waiting for the novelty to disappear, the sisters were doing something nobody could make viral. They were working. They practiced. They wrote songs. They recorded. They toured. And they got better. Then better again. And again. That's really important because there was a point where their age stopped being the interesting thing about them. The Metallica cover stopped being the interesting thing. Even the fact that they were sisters stopped being the interesting thing. The music became the interesting thing. And that's when the warning became a problem for the story we'd already written about them. Because you can dismiss a viral video. You can dismiss three talented kids. But what do you do with a band that keeps getting better for years? Eventually, you have to stop calling them a novelty and start listening. And once people did, something became obvious. They were not the future of rock. They were already here. Here's what I think happened to rock. It didn't suddenly die. We just became very, very good at looking backward. Think about how we talk about new rock bands. We compare them to Nirvana, to Guns N' Roses, to Foo Fighters, to bands that already proved themselves decades ago. And without realizing it, we created a strange rule. If new rock sounds like the past, we call it derivative. If it sounds different, we say it isn't really rock. And then we wonder why rock feels stuck. Maybe that's why the warnings are so interesting. They didn't come along trying to save the genre. They were not carrying a mission statement. They were just making music. And eventually, they were sharing stages with bands like Scorpions, Muse, The Killers, and Evanescence. At that point, the question wasn't, are these girls really a rock band? The question became, why are we still treating them like an exception? And that question leads somewhere much more uncomfortable. Because maybe the problem wasn't that rock stopped producing great bands. Maybe we stopped expecting it to. There is another reason the warning don't fit the story. Think about the rock mythology we inherited. The great artists suffered. They had broken families, addiction, chaos, trauma, self destruction. And somewhere along the way, we started connecting those things with authenticity. The idea was almost if you haven't suffered, how can your music be real? And look, I understand why we believed it. Rock history gives you plenty of evidence, but the warning gives you a different possibility. Three sisters, a stable family, parents who supported them, kids who discovered rock and simply decided they wanted to play it. They were not running away from something. They were running toward something. And maybe that's the part we got wrong. The suffering was never the requirement. The commitment was. The warning had other options. They chose this. They kept practicing. They kept touring. They kept improving. And eventually, the music did what music always does. It didn't care about their background. It either connected or it did not. And the warning kept connecting. Which brings us to the strangest part of the story. The Warning's new album is called Everything's Falling. Think about that title. For a band whose entire story seems to be about refusing to fall apart, why call the album Everything's Falling? Paulina described the album this way. The whole album is about facing failure and having to build yourself up after that. Because it isn't really a story about three girls who proved everyone wrong. It's about what happens after you prove everyone wrong. And suddenly, the title makes sense. Because success doesn't eliminate fear. It gives fear something to protect. Now, there is a career, an audience, expectations, something real that can actually be lost. And that changes the story. The Warning are not standing outside the fear anymore. They are inside it. They've built something. And now they have more to lose. Which is why Everything's Falling might be the perfect title. Because rock was never about being invincible. It was always about what you do when things start falling apart. So maybe we got the question wrong. Maybe the question was never, is rock dead? Because if rock were really dead, how do you explain the Warning? They didn't resurrect rock. They didn't bring back some golden age. They didn't save a dying genre. They simply refused to believe it was dying. And maybe that's why their story matters. Because the music was still there. The audience was still there. The possibility was still there. The only thing that disappeared was our expectation. We decided the great rock story had already been written. Then three sisters started writing another one. And suddenly, the whole question doesn't seem so certain anymore. Maybe rock didn't die. Maybe we just stopped looking for what comes next. Rock was supposed to die. The Warning didn't get the memo. And maybe neither should we. So tell me, Is Everything's Falling the Warning's best album yet? Let me know below. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe. Au revoir.